History is often written in blood, but sometimes it is written in ice. The year is 1812. Look at the map of Europe. It does not look like a collection of nations. It looks like the property of one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. From the shores of Lisbon to the borders of Poland, emperors and kings bow to his will. He is the modern Caesar, the god of war. But power is a dangerous drug. It blinds the eye and poisons the mind. Napoleon looked east, towards the vast, endless horizon of Russia. He did not see a graveyard. He saw the final piece of his puzzle. He believed he could conquer not just armies, but nature itself. He gathered the Grande Armée, 600,000 men. It was not just an army, it was a moving nation. French, Germans, Italians, Poles. A Tower of Babel marching under the French eagle. They said the ground shook when they moved. They said the rivers dried up when they drank. They were marching towards glory, or so they thought. In reality, they were marching into a white void that would swallow them whole. June 24th, the banks of the Niemen River, the border of Russia. As Napoleon rode to survey the crossing, a hare darted between his horse's legs. The emperor fell. A superstitious silence fell over his staff. Someone whispered, "A Roman would have turned back." But Napoleon was not a Roman. He dusted himself off and ordered the advance. We often think of the Russian winter, but first came the Russian summer, and it was brutal. As the army crossed into Russia, they found nothing. No enemy armies lined up to fight. No glorious battles. Just silence and dust. The Russians were retreating, pulling back deeper and deeper into their vast land. They burned their own bridges. They destroyed their own grain. They poisoned their own wells. This was the scorched earth strategy. The heat was suffocating. Soldiers began to drop, not from bullets, but from heat stroke and typhus. Before they even saw a Russian soldier, thousands of Frenchmen were already dead. The horses, eating unripe rye because there was no grass, died by the tens of thousands. The roadside was littered with the rotting carcasses of animals and men. Napoleon wanted a quick victory. He wanted a decisive battle, but Russia refused to fight. It simply receded like a ghost, luring him further into the trap. Finally, on September 7th, near a small village called Borodino, the Russians turned to fight. They could not let the invader reach Moscow without a stand. What followed was not a battle, it was a massacre. 70,000 men died in a single day. The sky turned black with smoke. The ground turned red with blood. It was a collision of flesh and iron on a scale the world had never seen. Napoleon won. Technically, the Russians withdrew, but it was a hollow victory. There was no surrender, no white flag, just mountains of corpses. Napoleon, usually energetic and brilliant, sat behind the lines, sick and lethargic. He looked at the carnage and whispered, "The field of the dead is a magnificent sight." But his marshals knew the truth. They were thousands of miles from home with a battered army, and the enemy was still intact. September 14th. The golden domes of Moscow appeared on the horizon. The prize, the heart of Russia. Napoleon sat on his horse on a hill, waiting. He waited for the boyars, the city officials, to come out with the keys to the city. He waited for the Tsar to beg for peace. He waited and waited, but no one came. When the French cavalry entered the city, they found a ghost town. The streets were empty. The houses were deserted. Only the wind roamed the grand avenues. And then, that night, the wind changed. Fires broke out in the merchant district, then in the palaces, then near the Kremlin. The Russians had done the unthinkable. They had set their own holy city on fire. For days, Moscow became an inferno. Napoleon watched from the Kremlin windows, his face illuminated by the flames of his conquest, turning to ash. "What a people," he muttered. "They burn themselves to destroy us. Scythians. They are Scythians." He stayed in the ruins for a month. A fatal mistake. The Tsar never replied. He knew that the greatest general of Russia was about to take the field. General Winter. October 19th. The order was finally given to retreat, but it was too late. As the army turned back toward France, the temperature plummeted. First came the rain, turning the roads to mud. Then came the snow. The mercury dropped. 0, -10, -20, -30 degrees. The Grand Army, once the pride of Europe, became a ragged column of skeletons. Men froze where they stood. If a soldier sat down to rest for a moment, he never stood up again. The snow covered him like a white shroud. They had no winter clothes. They wrapped themselves in women's silks looted from Moscow, magnificent tapestries, and rags. They looked like a carnival of the damned. Discipline collapsed. Soldiers fought over the carcasses of dead horses, eating the meat raw before it froze solid. Some accounts whisper of darker things, of men eating men in the madness of hunger. And always, on the flanks, the Cossacks waited. Like wolves, they shadowed the dying column, striking whenever a group fell behind. The crossing of the Berezina River was the final horror. Desperate engineers stood in freezing water up to their necks to build bridges. They died of hypothermia so their emperor could cross. When the bridges were finally burned, thousands were left behind, screaming in the darkness. Of the 600,000 men who marched into Russia, only about 30,000 crossed back. The rest were left behind, buried under the snow, dissolved into the mud, or taken prisoner. Napoleon abandoned his army in the final days, rushing back to Paris to secure his throne. He claimed, "The emperor's health has never been better." But the spell was broken. The myth of invincibility was buried on the road to Moscow. He had reached for the sun, and like Icarus, he had fallen. The Russian campaign was not just a military defeat, it was a lesson in hubris. It proved that no matter how much power a man holds, no matter how many crowns he wears, nature always wins. The snows of Russia melted the following spring, revealing a carpet of bones, a silent monument to the frozen dream of an emperor.